Hello, everyone. It is a testimony slash terrific Tuesday. Or you may want to use some other teas. I don't know. Y'all let me know in the comments. What kind of Tuesday is it for you? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Creative Scholar Book Club. We are having a brief book chat tonight on a short story. So I shan't be before you long. Give me just a moment to change the privacy for Facebook, which requires me to do it each time. So give me just a moment. It looks like it may be live with y'all. Let's see. Right now it's on friends only. Let me switch that to public and save. And I believe we should be good to go. I hope everyone has been amazing since last we met, which was at the top of March, finishing up the last book that we read together, which was All About Love by Bell Hooks. And I promised y'all that I would not leave y'all hanging in the book club for the weeks and months that there usually are between books that we're reading together. And so here I am, as promised. What is this? I'm not sure. If I X this out, what is going to happen? I don't know, but it's definitely in my way. So let me just move it. All right, right now I can see comments from Facebook and YouTube. So we are going to start. So again, welcome to the Creative Scholar Book Club. We are doing a little book chat tonight on a book called, it's a short story by J.R.R. Tolkien. Many of you know Tolkien by the Hobbit series, which I've never watched. Don't know much about it at all. Truth be told, I was put onto this short story while um, I was reading another book. I was reading Every Good Endeavor by Timothy Keller, and he mentioned this book because um, many of you know that one of my great loves and passions and forever studies in life is going to be the life of creators, leaders, people who are often tasked or driven or interested in highly doing things that are, in a lot of cases, unconventional. That, yeah, just having, especially if you are someone with a particular theology, Christian for sure, maybe some other faiths, having an ethic, a particular purpose or reason behind why you do the things you do, how you know it's something that you should make sacrifices for, and when you will know if it is worth the sacrifices, um, to find consolation through the challenges that come with pursuing things that are hard, conventional or not. um, yeah, I am always, my ears are always going to be perked up for answers, for solutions, and even just to hear the stories of others, um, to encourage myself, but also to encourage the many creatives and entrepreneurs and leaders and people who believe that they have purpose in life, and people who may struggle, and those who feel like I'm good. I'm always gonna have my ears peaked for those kinds of answers and those kinds of stories and solutions. So all of that to say, I learned about this little short story through something that I read in Every Good Endeavor. by Tim Keller, which I'm still reading. That has one has been a slower read for me, not because it's not a really good book, but just because I've been reading it in the midst of reading other things. And then I got sent off on a rabbit trail of reading Leaf by Niggle. So we're gonna jump into it. It is 7:10. One thing that has changed since the last time I went live for the book club is that let's see. One thing that has changed is that Facebook Lives will no longer just sit on the Facebook page. They will disappear, I believe, after about 30 days. So the great thing is this is also streaming to YouTube. So anyone who wants to watch this, if you find this on Facebook and you maybe hit save or something and you don't get a chance to watch it, and then you come back and it's gone, go ahead on over to YouTube. And you can find me at A Dose of Donetta or The Creative Scholar, and you will see this live um, saved on that page. All right, so that's the last thing that I kind of wanted to cover as far as um, just housekeeping tidbits. Let me know in the chat where you're watching from, whether you are live with me here or whether you come on later and leave your comment. Um, let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you're reading. And as another little icebreaker for us tonight, let me know if you could describe your day with a song, what would it be? So, whatever day you see this, I want to see in the comments if you could describe your day with a song, what would the song be? I thought about that earlier. My I thought of two songs. One at one point and one at another. One is Great is Your Mercy, Donnie McClurkin. And the other one, I don't even know who wrote it, but it's like an old school like hymn tune. Any of you who have seen what is the movie with Taraji P Henson? Somebody let me know in one of the chats. What is the name of the movie with Taraji P Henson and she is taking care of her sister's kids and she's like singing. She sings at this bar. That's her job. And anyway, somewhere in there, she ends up singing, "Oh Lord, I want you to help me." That song came to my mind several times today as a way that I would describe my day. But at the end of the day, I came out all right. The Lord did have mercy and He did help me. And I'm sitting here ready to talk about this book with y'all. Let me see. One more thing that I cannot see from YouTube. And then we will go in for probably about 20 minutes. I don't think it's going to take us much longer than that. Let me see. Let me see. And it's like my phone, y'all know, is listening. Because why? I just opened my email and it's telling me a new book by Tim Keller. All right, cool. I went to my email to make sure I was good on both YouTubes. And I am. So we're gonna jump right in. So if you look it up, Leaf by Niggle is a little short story by Tolkien. And when I went to buy it, I wanted the like Kindle version on Amazon. The only way you can buy the Kindle version is if you buy. It's like a series of short stories by Tolkien. And so I necessarily want the series at this time. Um, and I didn't want to wait for the hard copy to come to me. And I think even with the hard copy, the only way to buy it was within a series. So what I did was a little Google search and I found a PDF of the book and I didn't have to search very hard. Um, I think it's pretty. They're kind of floating around. But you can buy this short story within a series of short stories. You can find it on Amazon. Um, it was in a series of short stories at Barnes and Noble. I didn't really look anywhere else. So you could also try your local library. That's something that I don't hear a lot of people promote a whole lot, but I have been seeing, especially since many have been divesting from certain shopping platforms, I have seen a lot more people promoting, like Libby is one of the apps, and there are several different apps that you can download and you can sign in through your library card or some other kind of account to libraries where you can find a lot of this stuff digitally for free. You can borrow it and then you can give it back, which is what I would recommend for something like this. So, from this short story, this is literally 11 pages, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I guess it's more like 22 pages, 21 pages, because this is the PDF that I found. This is what it looks like. So, it's 11 of these pages. So, you got about 22 pages. Very quick read. I don't know if it took me an hour to read it because it's so very interesting. So, let's get into the book. The short story is about, he's described as a little man, and his name was Niggle. And through it starts out talking about this particular journey that Niggle has to take. But and I just realized while I was saying it, like, don't let the name don't let his name throw you off, because I'm not saying Nigger. I'm saying Niggle. That's the guy's name. So it starts out with a journey that he has to take, that he knows that he has to take because everyone has to take it at one point or another. And but of course he's hoping that it will be later than sooner, this journey that he has to take. And he was a painter. And without giving away all of the details, because I really want people to go and read this short story, because I think it'll be really inspiring, really for anyone who, um, you believe your life has purpose. You already know this, or maybe you're searching for that purpose and that meaning. But for all parties, most of us are very busy. Most of us are, um, trying to manage our time the best we can. Sometimes we find that we are doing better with management than other times. But what's universally attractive about this story is that this little man is balancing his gift of being a painter. And he is described as not a very successful painter. But he will kind of start things, get into these little things, and not necessarily be successful at them or even enjoy them. But he would start things. One of the things that he started was a garden, and he found that he wasn't much of a gardener. So instead of taking up the space that he was using for the garden, it was near this shed. He turned the shed into a painting studio. And, so he let the garden go. He was more focused on the shed, which he turned into a painting studio. So for a long time, he was trying to make this painting, which started with just a vision that he had of a tree. And of course, when he got the vision of the tree, he started to see more things in the background that he wanted to paint. But because he was such a stickler for detail, and although he wasn't the greatest painter, he did have a great love for painting, or he wasn't known as a great painter anyway. He spent a whole lot of time trying to paint this tree perfectly. And his dilemma was that he kept being interrupted. And you have to read to see like who was interrupting him. But he kept being interrupted. And every time he was interrupted, he would have this inner turmoil of what he should do. Should he stay focused on what he was doing with the painting, or should he um, stop for whatever was an interruption? And usually, the interruption could be seen as, okay, this is worthy of my time. This is something that I can do. This is something that I should do. And so, one of the things that happened that was like a turning point in the story was his neighbor came over and was in a panic about his wife being sick. And Niggle was like, she's probably just a cold. Like she's fine. It's gonna be all right. But the neighbor was the very anxious type, and the neighbor continued to, um, just kind of ask him, please, come help because I can't really walk, and so I need somebody to go and fetch a doctor. So this is you know way back in the day is the setting for this. So even though he's sure that the neighbor's wife only has a cold, and he's feeling like something, he's getting an inkling that he's not going to have as much time as he would like to work on this painting. He feels like, okay, well, if I don't go and get the doctor and something happens to my neighbor's wife, then that's not going to be good. I'm going to feel bad. And even though I know I'm running out of time, and I had set myself that for the next few days I'm going to work on this painting, he just felt compelled to go. So he went to go get the doctor. And even though he did all of that to go get the doctor wasn't coming at that moment. The doctor was like, okay, well, I'll be there tomorrow. So, in the process of him going to go get the doctor, he gets sick. And then when he comes back home, he finds out that he was correct. The neighbor's wife was just fine. She only had a cold. So they were up and at it doing their thing. And meanwhile, Niggle at this point is sick. So for the next few weeks, he's not able to work on his painting because he's sick from going to get the doctor for the neighbor's wife, who's fine now and doesn't need a doctor, and the doctor wasn't coming to the next day anyway. So you kind of get my drift of like what this guy's story was like. Um, I won't give away the ending because I want you to go online, Google it, find Leaf by Niggle, Niggle. It should be in the title, and read it. It's only like 22 pages. And when you read it, you will get why I was adamant that this was a little book that I wanted to come and discuss on the book club. So, what I'm going to do is just share like four, four major insights that I pulled from the book along with some of the quotes. All right. So if you um, are in YouTube, if you want to, how you can kind of pin like the time. If you want to pin the time at like 18 of where the points about this book begins, this is where they begin. And I'm also saying that so I can remember to go back and put timestamps in YouTube. All right. Point number one: the struggle of the kind-hearted is what I get from this book called Leaf by Niggle. It is a universal struggle. It is a struggle that I have experienced, and many or most of the people I love have experienced this struggle as people who are kind-hearted, especially if you are a person of faith. If you are a person who is a believer in the Bible says that we are supposed to be tender-hearted, forgiving one another, loving, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven us. There's literal scripture. We're supposed to be kind hearted people. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean that we don't get annoyed, irritated, impatient. But there is something to be said about people who are kind hearted. And this little man was a kind hearted individual. I think that's so significant for people who are creative people, and people who are those of faith who believe that they have purpose and calling in this life to serve, purpose and calling in this life to do good to others. Um, so oftentimes there is a struggle, even if you have like a direct purpose or a direct, I don't want to say a direct purpose because we have more than one, you know, thing that we're trying to accomplish in life, or more than one thing that God will instruct us to do. There's so many ways that people who believe that service is a part of our DNA and our lifestyle do. Even on your job. Like one thing I thought about with um, the struggle of the kind-hearted is even at work. Like there are the people who are resourceful and they can do things and they are very helpful. But even within that category, there's two. There's the category of a person who's very helpful and resourceful, but that person has boundaries. And then there's the person who's helpful and resourceful and they do not. One of those people can usually figure out a way to be organized and accomplish things. And that other person, even if you never see it, is all over the place behind the scenes because in their kind heartedness, they're trying to do everything for everyone as well as what they're responsible for. Most of us have seen it on our jobs. Many of us have seen it in the church. One of the sayings, if I can recall it correctly, or I might even just say the 10%. Most people who have worked in a church setting, um, and there are all types of different church settings, but there are certain church settings, and I think this might even be a universal thing too. I don't think this is just the black church. I don't think this is a particular denomination or a non-denomination. Pretty much at every church you go to, even the bigger churches, there is a 10% of people who do the majority of the work. Not because they're the only people who are able bodied, not because they're the only people who could do the job. They are the people who are willing to do the job. And within that 10%, at least about 50% of those people are the people that are kind hearted that actually struggle with people pleasing, that actually struggle with boundaries, that actually struggle with saying no. So there were just so many things that I just found relevant, and if you read it, you'll see exactly why I will pull that from this. So, the struggle of the kind-hearted. One of the quotes that I will share is on page 101, which is really the second page. It said, he could not, I'll just read it from there. I wrote it down, but it's at the bottom of page 101. So obviously this little PDF came from a short story because it's already 101. So page 101 at the bottom, it says, he could not get rid of his kind heart. It said, I wish I was more strong-minded, he sometimes said to himself, meaning that he wished other people's troubles did not make him feel uncomfortable. But for a long time, he was not seriously perturbed. At any rate, to I shall get this one picture done, my real picture, before I have to go on this wretched journey. So that was the quote for that one. He struggled with being a kind-hearted person because it was hard for him to focus on what he needed to do because he he cared when people needed things. He cared when people's lack of preparation meant there was an emergency. He made it his emergency. There was that wrestle within. Or even when people just legitimately just needed help and he was the one they passed by, he had to make those decisions. So let me know what you think in the comments if you are someone who is kind-hearted and you struggle. And interestingly, and uh, I heard this quote um, recently, and I'll just say the quote, but it's not my quote. And once you hear it, you're gonna probably know. Those of you who, a lot of y'all are gonna know who said it. And basically, the quote was, a person, basically, a giver, shouldn't, you know, partner with a taker because takers have no limits and neither do givers. I'm misquoting it a little bit only by like a word or two, but that was the precise point that was made. Takers shouldn't partner with givers because takers have no limits and neither do givers. And so what is going to happen? And I thought about that quote when I was reading through Leaf by Niggle because he struggled with his kind heart as a creative person. And that is something that happens because a lot of creatives are sensitive in one way or the other. Unfortunately, when you are one of those people, you almost can live in a space of like not reality when it comes to the fact that there are many other creative people who fall on the other end of the spectrum. Takers, users, manipulators. You almost forget that those people really exist because you know that that is not your reality. But, kind of as we saw in this example in this book, um, sometimes a huge emergency that can be made out of something that can knock you off focus and become your task when you actually have a task and your time to complete that task is being wasted while whomever wasted your time went on about their merry way in their life. So that was the first one. All right, the second insight that I pulled from Leaf by Niggle is don't allow your fears or the fears of others to get you off course. Trust your discernment. So, if you haven't picked it up by now, what journey Niggle had to go on eventually, that everyone has to go on, is the journey to the next phase, the other side. And basically, what happened was when I'm gonna read y'all the quote, and I'll tell y'all the page number. I'll go from before he went to the other side. On page 105, it talks about how what I had already told y'all that the lady only had a cold. She literally only had a cold. I'll start at this part where he did find the doctor. It said Niggle found the doctor and he left a note at the builder's. The office was shut and the builder had gone home to his fireside. Niggle got soaked to the skin and caught a chill himself. The doctor did not set out as promptly as Niggle had done. He arrived next day, which was quite convenient for him, as by that time there were two patients to deal with in neighboring houses. Niggle was in bed with a high temperature and marvelous patterns of leaves and involved branches forming in his head and on the ceiling. It did not comfort him to learn that Mrs. Parrish had only had a cold and was getting up. He turned his face to the wall and buried himself in leaves. So he didn't trust his discernment that Miss Parrish is gonna make it, and y'all can fetch the doctor in the morning. So that can be a struggle, but he didn't trust himself, and so that is why he got off his task, and he ended up not only losing time by going to see the doctor, he ended up losing time because he gets sick. All right, the third insight that I found helpful from this short story is this. Sometimes the people you help the most, um, who end up being, sometimes the people you help the most end up being your greatest distraction. And they don't necessarily see you or what you are doing um, as you must see you, as you must see your vision and treat it as such so that you have no regrets. You must also continue to be kind to people. They'll understand in time, or they won't. It won't matter in the end. And so, without giving away the story, that's one of the things that I drew from some of the way the story continued to progress, because what happens in the end is um, he gets to see the entire vision of what he saw, and that it actually was a vision that God had given him, that he only got to painting the leaf. And Miss the lady, I forgot her name, just like that, Miss Parrish, and her neighbor, there were people who they didn't even like him like that. They didn't even like Niggle, but he was convenient because he was kind and because he did think about how things impacted other people. But they didn't like him. They talked about him and how he started the garden and all of these different things, that he finished the garden, look how the garden looked. And they talked bad about his paintings. So it's like these people did not value the vision that God gave him because they felt like he's not this big famous painter. And why is it taking him so long to paint this tree? Not realizing that they were a part of the reason why it was taking him so long to paint the tree. Well, it wasn't their fault. They were being who they were, but he was choosing to prioritize the things that they wanted him to do over this vision that he just could not get out of his mind for all of his life, that he slowly, slowly, and slowly worked on. And it was a vision that God gave him. He found that out later on. Unfortunately, but fortunately, it was too late for him to actually bring all of it to fruition. Um, I'll tell you the quote from that book that helped me to draw that insight. That, and when I was reading this, I wasn't. I'm saying it like I was sitting there, like, oh, let me see what I can talk about. What sounds really deep from this book? That wasn't it at all. It was just a really interesting short story on a worthy recommender. A worthy recommender recommended it, and that's what made me read it, and I'm so glad that I did. So on page 117, um, this is after Niggle could no longer be, you know, I guess commended, complimented, recognized for his work, which did end up being great work. This is kind of like the context for when this happens. Let's see. How can I read this without telling y'all? Okay. So basically, the painting, the part, the tree, the leaf that Niggle was able to draw was indeed a part of the tree that he saw, that he didn't get to finish painting. But the tree was a part of like a great country. And so there's a place where Parrish, which was the gentleman who had Niggle to go out and get sick, trying to help him and his wife, he said, so Parrish was in the great country that the tree was from, and he was thinking about his wife, and he said, "I must wait for my wife. She'd be lonely. I'd rather gather that they would send her after me sometime or other when she was ready, and when I had got things ready for her. The house is finished now, as well as we could make it, but I should like to show it to her, so she'll be able to so she'll let's see she, I should like to show it to her. She'll be able to make it better, I expect, more homely. I hope she'll like this country too." He turned to the shepherd. "Are you a guide?" he asked. "Could you tell me the name of this country?" "Don't you know?" said the man. "It is Niggle's country. It is Niggle's picture, or most of it. A little of it is now Parrish's garden. Niggle's picture? Said Parrish in astonishment. Did you think of all of this, Niggle? I never knew you were so clever. Why didn't you tell me? And he said, and then the shepherd said, he tried to tell you long ago, said the man, but you would not look. He had only got canvas and paint in those days, and you wanted to mend your roof with them. This is what you and your wife used to call Niggle's nonsense, or that daubing. But it did not look like this then. Not real, said Parrish. No, it was only a glimpse then, said the man. But you might have caught the glimpse if you had ever thought it worthwhile to try. All right, so that was just a little piece of how basically Parrish was in this beautiful country, not knowing that the vision of the picture that Niggle had been trying to paint when he was asking Niggle to come and mend his roof instead of painting. That's where the picture of the great country came from. So she was astonished that what Niggle did was actually worthwhile. Um, and so that was that went with that third point. Like sometimes the people you help the most, they don't see you the way with the same vision that God has given you for yourself and for your life and for the things that He wants you to create if you're a creative person. And, that's kind of just how it goes, basically. It doesn't make Parrish and his wife bad people or the people that you help that sometimes are a distraction in a way to what it is that you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't make them bad, but that's just kind of how it goes. But if you know that that kind of comes with the creative journey, or if you know that kind of comes with the journey as a leader in different facets of life, um, you learn how to manage it emotionally, mentally, and with your time and your energy. You learn how to help people, but at the same time, not expect that you helping them means that they are necessarily going to support you when it comes to the things that mean the most to you. Because sometimes they just aren't the people. Like, sometimes it's like, it's better that way because they can't see things the way you see them. So like in today's times we would just basically say those are not your people. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't always mean it's not people that you love. It just means that it's just people who don't necessarily have sight or vision for who you are and what you're called to do outside of whatever part of it is of benefit to them. So I know that that is one of those things that sometimes we try to talk around in efforts of like, oh, just pretty much not dealing with the things that happen in life. Like it's such a universal story. And any, case study that you read, any person that you know that you actually sit down with that has had a creative journey of sorts over an expanse of time um, are going to say some of these same things, but I notice that oftentimes, well, I won't say people don't talk about it. People talk about it, but usually they write it in books. And half the time we don't read the books. And so we don't, unless we're actually seeking these things, a lot of times only people who are experiencing these things are seeking out books like that describe these things that people go through. But I would say if you have children that are creative, or you have some vision for, or you see something in them that God is already birthing in them, um, to think about think about, I guess, have some empathy in. I don't want to say like manufactured empathy, but get some understanding about what the life of a creative type person can be, especially if that person has um, they have already shown some promise in an area if they're very young. And one thing that comes to mind right now too is one of the things that I found through my own research in creatives on creatives is that research studies show that if a person shows some promise in a creative area or even in an area of academia from a very young age, even if it is like a slower progression and not like a shooting star type of thing, um, the likelihood that something substantial, I guess, or something that will actually have staying power or need some kind of a legacy of sorts that will contribute to a field, it is more likely if there was some promise shown at a young age, even if throughout like adolescents, teens, young adults, you don't really see much growth. But as long as that person is still growing and being exposed in some way, even into a very old age, you know, new things are percolating. And some of our, greatest discoveries, you know, came from someone who maybe they were mathematical as a very small child, but they didn't do anything noteworthy until they were 60 or 70 years old. They may have continued to grow in their mind and still envision things and work on different things and tinker here and there. But you know, it's just good to know, especially if you have children that show an interest in things that are creative, or children that are tender-hearted types. It's just very important to look. And if you have a child that is artistic, right now, giving that art some attention, giving that child some opportunity to explore that. It doesn't even have to be formal. It's just very important. Because in this story, this is a grown man we're talking about here, and his neighbors who thought he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for painting when they didn't think he was that great. It's just a story. But in real life, sometimes it's a small child. And just as adults, we're just so busy and so this and so that we don't take the time oftentimes to help to foster certain things. And I think one of the things that I really like about this book is that it does cover how like it's not good to make an idol out of the gifts and the talents, or even a vision that God has given us. Basically, it really does show how like everything that God gives us, even if it is a gift that we are to give to the world, in one way or another, like it is just a small part of the grand scheme of eternity. So that does two things. It's humbling, and it is gives a boost of confidence as well towards whatever efforts, whatever time, thoughts, and energy, whatever struggle, whatever surrender goes into the things that God places in our heart, in our minds, in our hearts, and in our hands to do. Remembering that it is just a small piece of the whole grand scheme of the picture of what God is doing, what his overall purpose is in things, but at the same time, the fact that it is a part of the picture, it is important, and so it should be invested in. Um, I think another thing that I like, which is not one of my 4 points, I don't think. Um, well, yeah, it is. I'll talk about it here. So, my fourth and final point, well, my fourth and final official point from reading this short story is this. Only the true essence of what you produce will have a long term effect, but eventually it will all be forgotten. Only what is done for Christ will last. That is what I drew from how this story was just crafted in its totality, but when you get to the end, basically, at some point, you know, when Niggle couldn't hear it anymore, he was recognized for how exquisite his little piece of art was. And then from there, it was displayed and he was remembered for a time, but eventually he was forgotten. And so was his leaf. But even though he and his leaf were forgotten in time, in our sense of time, his leaf was only a piece of a tree, which was the vision that he had of something that God actually had the whole picture of, that actually exists in time, in eternity. And so I just love how well rounded. It's just I mean, we are talking about Tolkien, so of course. This was also somewhat of an analogy of Tolkien's life. I didn't know much about him really when it comes to The Hobbit. I mean, I knew about The Hobbit, but I've never watched the series or any of the offshoots of the series. I never read the books. But for people who are Tolkien fans, then you probably know his story. In that it took him a very long time to finish writing The Hobbit. And there were times where he wasn't gonna fool with it anymore. But what I thought was interesting is that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were good friends, which I didn't know either until I read that. And one of my 4 points is not this, but the fifth and final and probably most important point that is practical in today's time is friendships, how important friendships with other people who get it are. Now, that doesn't always look like a Tolkien and a C.S. Lewis kind of friendship. Um, but I'm sure neither Tolkien nor Lewis, or maybe they did know at some point, like, oh, this is gonna be like people for years to come will read and talk about us in our writings, or people will be moved and lives shifted from reading things that we wrote. I don't know that they necessarily knew that. I probably need to read up a little bit more on both of them. I just know I of the pair, I've read a lot more of C.S. Lewis, and love C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis um, writing. But the fifth and final point, then that'll be my fifth. That'll be my official final point. How important it is to have um, a friendship. Period. All of your friends don't have to do what you do, or be interested in what you're interested in, or be on the track that you're on. But there comes a point where you know it's important to be around people who really get it, or at least be in a community of people who really get it, and find a space within that community of people who really get it. And when I say really get it, like beyond the surface, really get it. Because even your people, your loved ones, your family, people who love you the absolute most, who support you down, as they say, um, there is a level to where you don't even want to. I, how can I explain it? Like, for example, I know, like for me, when I was working on my doctorate, I was glad, people were interested in family members and different friends had an interest enough in what I was studying and what I was spending all of this time reading and writing and pondering and researching over. But at the same time, like, I guess because I'm an empathetic person, I didn't want to bog them down. Like, I knew, like, I'm doing this at this point in time. So I appreciated their support of me, but at the same time, when it came to certain conversations, um, I didn't even want to bother them with that because I just felt like I don't even want to put nobody, I don't want to even obligate you Even though people did, if I needed them, like sit through me kind of just talking, just rambling about whatever I was studying or whatever issue I was having with writing at the time, or pulling something together, or being tired, or just whatever during COVID. People did listen to me, but at the same time, when it was certain conversations, when I knew like I need to be able to like even shorthand through the conversation, I knew that there were certain people who had either already been through it, or there were people who were going through it with me. So when it came in certain times, those are the people who I needed to talk to, because um, there was some reciprocity and some mutuality in being able to help one another in a way that wasn't like a burden. I guess it for and that's just that might just that's different people, but I'm one of those to who where I appreciate people supporting and wanting to help me. But I also have an understanding that certain things are going to be an unnecessary burden on people when they're not like in what I'm in, so they're not able to actually help me in a practical way, or in the way that I need. Even though, there have been many times where God has used someone who wasn't into what I was into, but they still just happened to be passing by and had some kind of an insight that, a light bulb went off for me. So I'm not saying that if people aren't in your, discipline, they can't help and support you. But if you know, sometimes there are just, you need to have certain conversations with certain people, um, who get it. Um, and I thought it was so cool because when I thought about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, that Tolkien wrote fantasy fiction, and C.S. Lewis, you know wrote fantasy fiction too in some ways, but it was when you think about Chronicles of Narnia and all of that, he always had some kind of Christ centric message in his works, especially the greater ones that most people know about. So yeah, that was just something I discovered after reading this, and I just kind of did a little quick search on Tolkien so I could have some context for his mind when he wrote this. Um, but it did bring about that last point. It's important to find community because, and it's not just people to talk to. It's really important when it comes to growth. If you think about it like a plant, which I'm sitting next to my four babies that I've had, one that I've had for almost 3 years. The other that I will have had a year on my birthday, my money plant. Um, and when did I get this one? My pathos I've had for almost a year on my birthday too. And the Caletheia I've had for probably a year and a half. Anyway, sidebar. And my plants have names, but we'll talk about that later. Um, if you think about a plant, you know, you can take a plant to a beautiful setting where it actually blends in well and looks good in that setting. But if you don't have the right type of soil, if it doesn't have the appropriate sunlight, if it doesn't have the right amount of water, it's not going to thrive, or it might not even live. And I think about like all of my plants, I believe, are three of my four plants are tropical. And so even though I live in an area that is not considered a tropical climate, these plants are still alive. But I can promise you, and they're not by a window that is like, they all need indirect sunlight. But when the people had said indirect, I don't believe they meant so indirect that it's just not a lot of light. They get sunlight, but I'm sure in another space, if they are in a big window that could be open a lot, they would probably be thriving better. Um, but anyway, I won't go off on a tangent about my plants, but I will say that's what I'm saying for number five. Your environment, it really does matter. And sometimes you can be in an environment that is not unhealthy, but it is not what you need to thrive in those moments. Thankfully, in our day and time, we do have the internet, so you can be in Timbuktu and be in a community of writers if you're a writer. You can be in a community of singers if you're a singer. Um, you can get coaching and lessons online if you need to. But whatever you do, community is important. If you are the person who is creative, but very much so, if you are the parent of a creative person, if you are the spouse of a creative person, if you are the pastor or the women's leader or the men's leader or the person who is the discipler, if you are someone who has influence, if you are someone who your opinion, your thoughts, your feedback matters to someone's creative soul, whether you are creative in that way or not. These are just good things to think about that are all very common sense, very, very true to life examples and insights pulled from this story. But life is busy and sometimes we forget. So I think that's all I want to say about Leaf by Niggle by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you have never read it, please Google it. And what I will also do, if you are actually in the Facebook book club, I will find the link where I found the PDF and share it with you. If you want to just go and give it a quick read. Oh man, it's so good. Like, it's so good. And I tried to tell it without telling it because I really want some of y'all to just go read it. But anyway, that will conclude our book chat on Leaf by Niggle by J.R.R. Tolkien. I hope it is encouraging in some way to someone somewhere. And as a person who um, is creative, as a person who, you know, apparently is committed to not only fighting the good fight of faith, but fighting the good fight of purpose in when it comes to creativity. Um, I'm encouraged by Leaf by Nickel. And I'm even more encouraged to, continue the work of supporting other leaders and creatives because we are often very much misunderstood. And even the most well-meaning, you know, make a lot of assumptions. Even trying to be helpful. So the more, I mean, the more we gain some clarity for ourselves on how we need to think and process and move, the better off we'll be. The more we'll be able to clearly communicate, certain things when it comes to boundaries and so forth. And, for the kind-hearted, the more you will be assured that you are not alone. There have been people like you since way back um, when this little short story was written, which I'm going to tell you just for fun. Over 100 years, 1938, 1939, there were people like you back then. So you're not just some weirdo with ADHD, because that's what we would call Niggle. We would say, oh, he must have had ADHD because he was starting all these projects, but he was really supposed to be a painter. And if he would have just painted and quit trying to have a garden and all of these things, maybe he would have been a better painter. That's what we would say about Niggle if he existed in 2025. But whether you are someone who has a formal diagnosis or not, but you are creative and you are a caring person. But you know you have ability and potential. You know, on your journey, you know, from now until to focus and to be a good steward of all of the resources God has given you, from your gifting to your kind heart, because it's something that God gave you so that He could use it for His glory, but also for you to pour into whatever it is that He has called you to do. So, you just having a kind heart because God gave it to you doesn't mean you don't have to learn boundaries. Sorry, it doesn't mean that you have to become a yes man or a yes woman in order to have peace in this life. It just means you gotta grow. You gotta continue to grow, and we all must continue to grow with your kind heart. And prayerfully, all of us will be blessed with lots and lots and lots of time before we have to take that journey that Niggle took. And that we will be good stewards of that lots and lots of time that God blesses us with. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this book chat on Leaf by Niggle. I will be back again soon. I I think what I will try to do, which don't hold me to this, because I'm still trying to. I may come on and maybe every other Tuesday because that is when I'm actually free right now to do a little book chat. If it is not on a short story, it may be on like a particular Bible study, like a book, a chapter that I'm studying. But I know this is one book that I want to cover, but I'm just not sure when. I think I might cover this in June, if possible, but since that is Father's Day month. But I actually pre ordered this book. I heard this gentleman doing an interview months ago. It had to have been like November, December. October, November rather, that I heard this gentleman doing an interview, and he was talking about his book, which was on pre-order, and it was such a good interview. Y'all know I'll buy a book, so I pre-ordered the book and forgot about it. Well, a couple of weeks ago, the book shows up, and so I definitely, when I saw the guy, the gentleman, Mr. Jason Wilson, talking on an interview months ago, I thought from his interviews that his book was valuable. And so, since I have it, what I would like to do is read it. Maybe in June, I think might be a great time to read it. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not exactly sure what my June schedule is going to be, but I do know I'm going to be reading either way. So, let me know if any of you would be interested in reading through this in June. I would love for some of my men of valor that are in the book club, or those of you who maybe are not, but you read the book, or you want to read the book. I would love for some men to jump in on this one and give us some feedback or some thoughts on it. But either way, you know, ladies, we will read because we want to learn. We will listen to men talk and learn from them. So I want to read this probably in June. This is one that I know that'll be like a longer book. And I said, you know, I know for sure, well, my plans, which are in God's hands, I would like to, you know, do the fall book club, which is our original season to read together. But I had also said that I would see about a summer book club type of thing. So maybe a book in June and July, but we'll see. I definitely want to read this at some point soon, though. So, y'all check this out if you haven't yet. I haven't read it yet, but most of you probably have seen, because from the time that I saw this interview, like October, November, I've been seeing him all over the place doing interviews now. I saw him on the. I didn't watch the interview, I don't think. No, I didn't watch the interview, but I did see, like, in my feed that he was on the Breakfast Club a couple of maybe weeks ago. Um, I did see that he was on Dear Future Wifey. Um, but I'm trying to see. He was on B Simone. These are a lot. I'm just remembering where I saw his face, but I'm trying to remember who was interviewing him when I saw him, so that I pre-ordered this book. I don't even remember who was interviewing him. but it was in 2024, like towards the fourth quarter probably of 2024. I saw the interview, pre-ordered, and the book came. So I do want to read this. I've seen people talking about it pretty well, like as far as reviews. So check it out. I pre-ordered it on that one platform that, yeah, it's probably, get it where you want to get it. I say it like that. Buy it from whoever you want to buy it from. But yeah, so that's one. But that'll be, during the summer months. But for April, May, we'll see. I think for April, May, I'm gonna continue doing these little short stories for 30 minutes to an hour every other Tuesday is what I would like to do. And I think the next one that I do, that'll be a short story. Not this coming Tuesday, but the next is gonna be um where did I put it that I wanted to do? Oh, I wanted to do this little, like, it's I don't want to call it a mini book. It is a book, but it's small. Let me see how many pages, cause I don't want to mess that up, and I don't want to shortchange it either. This book has how many pages? I just be messing up stuff, but not really. Okay, no, I'm glad I didn't say that because I don't have the paper copy of this book. So I did not know it is 208 pages. Um, I want to read We Go On. You guys saw me probably repost an advertisement for the tour for We Go On. My former pastor and brother and friend, John Onwuchekwa, wrote this book, and it the subtitle is Finding Purpose in All of Life's Sorrows and Joys. And I wanted to read it before I go to the tour in April. So I was thinking towards it is April. Happy April, by the way. Today is April 1st. I wanted to read it before I go to the tour towards the end of the month. So that's another like shorter book. It's 208 pages, but I don't know why I felt like it. I feel like it's a smaller book, but I'll see. If that's one that I can get read before the end of the month, I will do that one on one of the Tuesdays. Maybe the Tuesday before the tour. Um, and I wanted to do, what is one more? It was like I think I was saying I wanted to do, it was Screw Tape Letters, I believe that I was saying was next. Yes. Since we read the short story by Tolkien, and it reminded me of my love for from some of C.S. Lewis's shorter books, I thought to read Screw Tape Letters and do a book chat on that because it's great if you've never read it, but I feel like maybe a lot more people have even read Screw Tape Letters than anything by Tolkien that, would see this or follow the book club. So those are some books I wanted to read. The Men, The Moment Demands, probably in June though. That's summer. But as far as shorter books, I wanted to read We Go On, and I wanted to read the Screw Tape Letters. All right, I'm going for real this time. Thank y'all so much for those of you who have popped in. If you happen to see the replay of this, I would still love your feedback and your comments on Facebook or YouTube. As I said earlier, on Facebook, it's going to disappear in I think 30 or 90 days, but it will stay over on YouTube. So go ahead on over to YouTube and subscribe. I am at A Dose of Danetta over there. But you can also subscribe to the Creative Scholar YouTube page as well if you would like to watch the replay after the next couple of weeks or so. All right, I hope y'all have enjoyed this book chat. Have an amazing Tuesday, and I will see you the next time. Have a good night.